Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a US political update, a live stream where I'm going to be talking to you about what has taken place today in a very long hearing, a 5-hour hearing of Attorney General Pam Bondi, not just about the Epstein files, but also about Minneapolis, also about January the 6th. All sorts of different things came up, and she was put under the cosh. She was hauled over the hot coals by a number of particularly Democrat lawmakers. There was Thomas Massie for the Republicans, who was obviously one of the sponsors of the Epstein bill that was passed eventually. The bill that Ro Khanna and himself co-sponsored. But essentially, the Republicans didn't really have anything to say. In fact, they literally didn't have anything to say. I think a lot of them didn't even, they gave up their time, if you like. So we're going to look at some of the highlights. One point of note to make here is that the sound is up and down for the clips I use because they're taken from social media rather than looking at the whole video and having to trawl through 5 hours worth of of people speaking to Pam Bondi. It's all very fiery, and then having to know where to stop and start the video. So I'm taking a load of clips that I think really summarize the whole interaction, but some of the clips might be a little bit louder than others. It's very difficult to sort that out when I am doing a live. Right, before we get into the details, as ever, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, and share to the channel. It makes a difference and it keeps you in the loop. Right, we're going to go into the details now. Of course, Pam Bondi is not everyone's cup of tea, and arguably she's not really a particularly good attorney general. In fact, she's been under fire, it has been thought, from Trump himself, not handling some of these scandals particularly well. She has been at times a bookie's favorite for being kicked out of the administration first, if you like. Surprisingly, compared to Trump's first tenure, we've only seen Mike Waltz take one for the team. I think he's the only person that has been got rid of. But back in Trump 1.0, during the chaos of that tenure, there are a whole host of people who well, it's a bit of a, not a revolving door, but people are consistently falling by the wayside there. Okay, let's get into the details. Okay, a few thoughts first, and thank you very much, by the way, for being here, of course, in the live stream, and thank you to the mods who are, I'm sure, making sure things are running smoothly and pleasantly for all concerned. Pam Bondi's abysmal conduct and disrespect at today's congressional hearing should leave Americans horrified and humiliated. She appears to be entirely feral, as if she's never participated in human interaction before. If she had been raised by wolves, she'd be far better behaved. I mean, she's coming in for an awful lot of criticism. It's interesting because Fox News actually pulled away from the hearing. Obviously, it's a very long hearing, you can't show it all, but it was, I think, quite clear that they didn't have the stomach to show too much of it because it wasn't exactly enjoyable viewing for supporters of the administration, although you could argue it's a particularly partisan affair, with Thomas Massie being one of the few exceptions there. Ron Filipkowski for the Midas Touch Network says, I've watched a lot of congressional hearings over the last 40 years. The performance by Bondi is the single most unprofessional, non-responsive, reprehensible, and obnoxious I've ever seen from any witness who has testified before any committee of either chamber. So this is the House of Representatives that she is testifying in front of. As someone says here, it's abundantly clear Pam Bondi is not the Attorney General of the United States. Pam Bondi is a lead defense lawyer of Donald Trump and the Epstein elite class. Okay, a couple of things to note of this comment, because actually it's quite an astute comment. Basically, during her is it a hearing? I don't know if that's a correct word, but when she was being sort of interviewed for the job, and before the voting and the nomination process for the Attorney General, They were questioning on her on whether she would she would separate herself from the presidency. Would she be acting on behalf of the presidency, or would she equally hold the president to account by point of fact that she is the lead lawyer in the land? And she was saying all the right things during that process, but it turns out later she let slip that she was effectively, I forget the exact phraseology she used, but she's like, I am, the president's lawyer type thing, which is of course not what the attorney general is supposed to be. Okay. And so it's very clear that she is indeed the lead defense lawyer for Donald Trump and the Epstein elite class. Now, this phrase, Epstein elite class, is something that Georgia Senator John Ossoff, who some people are touting for being a potential for a presidential run in 2028. So he could be one of the Democrats' front runners there. He's sort of really coming into his own at the moment. It's an exceptionally good speech he made the other day at a rally. But John Ossoff coined this term, Epstein elite class, and it is catching on. Some people saying that is a very, that is a really important maxim. You can get a lot of currency out of that actually it looks like, Trump is surrounding himself by the swamp he is supposedly supposed to be draining, but actually he is acting on behalf of the Epstein elite class. And there are a lot of people in there, billionaires, movers and shakers of society, whom Trump is defending. And Pam Bondi is, it appears, very obviously defending that elite class in a hearing such as took place today. And this is an incredible part of the interactions today. As this source says, I didn't realize we don't pursue pedophiles if the stock market is doing well. Thank you, Pam Bondi, for that clarification. If you've not heard this so far, that's going to be a highlight that we're going to go through in a wee while. I know some of you in the live chat have actually watched the whole thing. Wow. I mean, that is some form of self-induced punishment. Epstein survivors raised their hands at one point to show that they had been ignored by Trump's Department of Justice, while Attorney General Pam Bondi would not even look their way. That image says more than any press conference ever could. Survivors asking to be heard, officials looking away. And that is, I think, a really, really significant, I guess, narrative that can be derived from these interactions, that Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice don't really care for justice, don't really care for the victims. They look to protect the perpetrators. They look to redact names that are names of co-conspirators in this horrendous case. And before we get onto the videos, we have, if Trump doesn't fire Lutnick, so we know that Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, has lied. He lied on television, talking about his meeting of Jeffrey Epstein because he was a neighbor of his, right next door, townhouse next door in New York. Went to meet, according to Howard Lutnick, Jeffrey Epstein with his wife, got creeped out, said never had anything to do with Epstein again. And now we understand that that was a complete lie. The Epstein files have thrown out the fact that he went into business with Jeffrey Epstein, contacted him to go and have a party on one of his islands, so on and so forth. That the idea that he walked away after that initial meeting with Jeffrey Epstein and his wife being creeped out and had nothing to do with Epstein is an outright lie. So if Trump doesn't fire Lutnick and Pam Bondi this week, the GOP is toast in the midterms, and Trump himself will end up impeached and then criminally prosecuted, along with many members of his family who are seemingly involved in crypto payoff schemes. I mean, great. If that happens, that's unlikely to happen because I don't think morality features in Trump's calculations these days, and there's nothing like loyalty where he's concerned. And these people, as long as they are loyal to Trump, will probably cling on to their jobs. or you could see them go by the wayside, but he'll carry on regardless. Pam Bondi's weirdly aggressive and defensive performance today is not winning her much praise in the conspiracy theory space. A lot of these folks are realizing, albeit slowly, that Trump completely played them. So there's several claims that, I'm a 3 times Trump voter and I've now had enough. This is absolutely unacceptable. I was contacted by Greg Terry, who's a conservative today, co-YouTuber, who was absolutely disgusted by this hearing. He reached out to me. He's like, absolutely flabbergasted. Okay, so Jamie Raskin is I really like Jamie Raskin. He's a constitutional lawyer. He's a legal expert, right? So he knows his onions when it comes to the world of jurisprudence, right? Here he is kind of setting things out for Pam Bondi early doors.
Now, as ranking member, I asked the chairman to add a few extra rounds of questions today because we each have 5 hours of questions, not 5 minutes, but we're stuck with 5 minutes. That's clearly insufficient to give voice to America's victims and survivors and to demand answers about all the corruption and cover-ups that we see at DOJ right now. We've got just one round, so we ask you politely but firmly, Madam Attorney General, please do not waste 1 second of our precious time by evading questions, by changing the subject, or engaging in personal attacks against members of Congress. We saw your performance in the Senate, and we're not going to accept that. This isn't a game.
It's really important what he says here. I don't want personal attacks against members of Congress. This is exactly what she does, right? And Jamie Raskin knows this. He's done his research. He's seen her in these hearings before. And actually, we've seen this from a number of people in the Trump administration who have been involved in these sorts of hearings, is that instead of answering the question, they do a bit of whataboutism and they say, they deflect and say, well, what about what's going on in your district? What about this person over here? What about this horrific thing that happened? You're like, well, we're not here to talk about that. We're here, you're the one that is being interviewed here, not us. Like that is just pure whataboutism. Or it's actually the two cockcrow fallacy quite often that she employs. The two cockcrow fallacy is this fallacy of you too. It's like, you're saying I'm bad. Well, what about you? Okay, well, I could be a horrific human being. I could be the worst human being on earth. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you and your performance in your role. That's what this hearing is about. And just because I'm a horrific human being, it doesn't justify your horrible behavior, right? In whatever context we're talking about, that's a two cockcrow fallacy. Like, yeah, okay, I hold my hands up. I'm a horrible human being. But we're talking about you. Now, Jamie Raskin's on it there.
In the Senate, you brought something with you called a burn book, a binder of smears to attack members personally for doing the people's work of oversight. Please set the burn book aside and answer our questions. And when you hear us reclaim our time, that means it's time for you to stop speaking. We only have 5 minutes. So when we reclaim our time, that means you stop. And if you don't, we will ask the chair to stop the clock and let you go on his time. The quality of justice in America depends on the character of our government. Please do your job and bring the Department of Justice back from the brink. The survivors seated behind you and the American people watching everywhere deserve a Department of Justice worthy of its name. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Objection.
So that is, I think, a good way to set things in motion here.
Well, I want the whole country to look at this because this is the Attorney General of the United States whose job is law enforcement. We've never had a witness who has misunderstood our rules and been unable to conform his or her conduct to our rules before. We have only 5 minutes. And so we use our time to ask you specific questions.
How long are you giving me to
Excuse me, I'm not yielding to you right now. I'd like that second restored too. So, Ms. Bondi, the way it works is we ask you a question and you answer it. And if you go off on a wild goose chase, another tangent, you start reading statistics or you start talking about stuff going on in our district. And by the way, I invite you to my district. Come to my district, but that's not what we're here to do today. Okay? So, and you do that, then we're allowed to say we reclaim our time. At that point, you have to be quiet. You have no choice. You have to be quiet. So I hope you understand the rule at this point. Well, I want...
Just setting out the rules of play here. Here he is again, Jamie Raskin.
General Bondi. Bondi, you've got the best lawyer's job in America because your mission is justice and your clients are the American people. But to promote justice for the people, you've got to listen to the victims, like the women seated behind you today. Those are just some of the hundreds of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's global sex trafficking ring who are demanding that the truth be told and are demanding accountability for the abusers who trafficked and raped them. Whether it's Epstein's human trafficking ring or the homicidal governmental violence against citizens in Minneapolis, as Attorney General, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims. That will be your legacy unless you act quickly to change course. You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice. You've been ordered by subpoena and by Congress to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos in the Epstein files, but you've turned over only 3 million. You say you're not turning over the other 3 million because they're somehow duplicative, but we know that there are actual memos of victim statements in there. And you also took down the Department of Justice's prosecution memo from 2019. So it's clearly not all duplicative, but even if it were, why not release it? Just release all the duplicative stuff. In the half you did produce, you redacted the names of abusers, enablers, accomplices, and co-conspirators, apparently to spare them embarrassment and disgrace, which is the exact opposite of what the law ordered you to do. Many had kept their torment private, even from family and friends, but you published their names, their identities, their images on thousands of pages for the world to see. So you ignored the law, and even with over 100,000 employees at your disposal, you acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence.
Okay, so that pretty much lays out what the issues are with regard to the Epstein situation. I think I'm just going to go to this particular representative, Goldman, who talks about those victims who are standing or sitting, they eventually stand behind Pam Bondi.
In an interview last week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche
You can't go off script.
said that any victim that wants to speak with the department has done so, hopefully. Well, thanks to the incredibly brave people sitting here behind you, we can actually ask them if that's true. Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses to talk to. Gentlemen, time has expired. And
Okay, so this is the, referring to indeed this image here, or referring to these people as he was live. This is a situation whereby not a single one of these people, these victims, has been approached by the Department of Justice. So, what are they doing? Are they trying to find justice for these victims? That's kind of a weird thing to be seeking to do if you're not going to speak to them at all. And each of these have reached out to the DOJ, and none of them have been entertained by the DOJ. So Goldman here is absolutely on the money here to hold, or try and hold, Pam Bondi accountable for that complete lacking there. We're going to go back to Jamie Raskin, who just gives us another little bit. I'm not going to show you the full. Actually, no. This is only a shorter one. This is anyway.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch. Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
Lawyer, not even.
Now, I'm going to play that again because this is a hearing where she just calls Jamie Raskin a washed-up loser lawyer.
Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Washed up loser lawyer, you're not even a lawyer. Well, actually, he's a representative in the House of Representatives for the United States Congress, and he has a job to do in holding you account for your job as Attorney General. And I think just the height of this unprofessionalism here from Pam Bondi is pretty indicative.
Get back at least 45 seconds.
We will give you a few more seconds. I said that already.
45 seconds.
Okay, so just insulting Jamie Raskin there in no uncertain terms. And in the final Jamie Raskin bit, I'm going to show you. I'm not going to show you the full amount. This is one I was thinking of before. The full amount of this, I'm going to dip into this a little later. He basically details the insufficiency of the Department of Justice over the course of the last year, all of the absolutely horrendous jobs that, or the horrendous things that have taken place under the purview of the Department of Justice and therefore Pam Bondi. So he's just detailing everything.
You replaced him with Lindsay Halligan, Trump's personal lawyer from the Mar-a-Lago documents case, who had zero prosecutorial experience and no qualifications. And then you were humiliated when a federal judge found that this corrupt appointment was blatantly unlawful and threw out Halligan's indictments entirely. And grand juries of American citizens have repeatedly rejected your vendettas and baseless indictments brought by the hacks left at DOJ now, with 2 different grand juries in Virginia voting down indictments against Letitia James in a single week. And just yesterday, another grand jury shut down your vendetta factory by rejecting indictments against the 6 members of Congress who had spoken out to remind all service members that they have a duty to refuse illegal orders.
This is a really important point, actually. Some people are arguing that the DOJ, there's this story that happened yesterday where a Supreme Court took down, or a court, I don't know which court it was, but it struck down this case that the DOJ brought against the six politicians, lawmakers, Democrat lawmakers who came out and did this video. One of them was Mark Kelly. Pete Hegseth from the Department of War has now punished Mark Kelly for doing this video by taking away some of his pension. And these 6 people who are involved in that, who did nothing other than to restate the existing law. They just restate the existing law of the country. The Department of Justice tried to indict them. Right? These are 6 opposition Democrat lawmakers where the government tried to essentially get them sent down for creating this video. And that is an absolutely outrageous weaponization of the Department of Justice that thankfully it was struck down, but that should be front page news all over the shop. But so much is going on in the United States and around the world that kind of just gets lost in the long weeds of the craziness of the Trump administration. But he's talking about that, saying that failed. Like he's just listing all of these things that she's failed with or been unable to achieve, all these crazy things. One of the comments that came earlier in this exchange was, you turned the People's Department of Justice into Trump's instrument of revenge. Trump orders up prosecution like pizza.
You tried to get a grand jury to indict 6 members of Congress who were veterans of our armed forces on charges of seditious conspiracy simply for exercising their First Amendment rights. I hope you will heed the wisdom and the constitutional patriotism of those grand jurors and not try it again by doubling down on that humiliation. As your best lawyers are sacked for having participated in the January 6th case or just flee for the exits now, your new lawyers keep lying in court. In dozens of cases, they've been excoriated for lying to federal judges. Chief Judge Boasberg, right here in DC, suggested your Department of Justice perpetrated a fraud on the court Other judges found your statements to be, quote, inexplicably misleading, patently incredible, totally inconsistent, and so disingenuous that the court is left with little confidence that the government can be trusted to tell the truth about anything.
So a lot of this is an opportunity for the Democrats to just give a broadside to the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi here. It isn't necessary that they are asking questions. I mean, she just deflects, bats the questions away anyway, and makes no attempt to answer them. So a lot of this is an opportunity to get out in public the grievances against the Department of Justice that they quite justifiably have. So yeah, we've listened to that one. Here we have her losing her mind. Now, this is, like I said earlier at the beginning of the video, one of the takeaways from this whole hearing. It's an absolutely, and that's what I did the thumbnail on, it's an absolutely extraordinary thing for her to say. She essentially says, what are we doing here talking about the Epstein files? What a waste of time when the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 are doing really well. Like, the stock exchange is on fire. We should be talking about that rather than the Epstein files. It's like, are you freaking serious?
The Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee.
I can't understand that you would have the audacity, the absolute audacity to sit there and saying, what do you mean you're asking what's Dow Jones got to do with anything here? How could you question like that? How could you be incredulous that someone might suggest that that's a ridiculous thing to be talking about when you're the Attorney General in a hearing being asked about the horrors of the Epstein files, and you've got Epstein survivors sitting behind you, and you're going, well, they're all irrelevant. Freaking don't know why these guys are here. Waste of time. We should have people from the stock exchange here. Why don't you guys go away and get some people from the Dow Jones in here? And we can all have a party about how bloody wonderful the stock market is at the moment. It's just absolutely outrageous that she could be so absolutely insensitive. But this is, you can see that this is coming from her files. This is one of the techniques that she has written down here. She's reading from her script. It's like, right, if they're putting you under a hard time over the Epstein files, just say how wonderful the stock exchange is.
The Dow right now is over. The Dow is over 50,000.
I mean, it just makes me want to be sick.
Talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Are you kidding? Are you kidding? You've questioned my mention of the stock exchange in a hearing about the Epstein files. Are you kidding? No, I'm not kidding. You're an idiot. What are you doing as the head lawyer in the United States government? My goodness. As this person says, I've been a Republican my entire life, and today I'm deeply ashamed that this idiot sits in this office. And that's that's in the context of what she said about the stock market. Why have you not indicted the satanic baby-eating pedos who rule the world? Well, have you seen the stock market? I mean, that's the kind of translation we can take from that. Absolutely incredible. We hear that Pam Bondi, also in this hearing, claims that an email of Epstein describing his relationship with Donald Trump to Ghislaine Maxwell is now privileged. What that means is basically we don't have to released that to the public. It's privileged because he's the president of the United States and, you know, national security, that kind of stuff, which is essentially confessing, as this person says, to a cover-up. Here is the exchange on that as far as I remember.
I also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted. And it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege. There is no attorney-client privilege. And I see you're checking with your staff. And I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 20?
Okay, so this is exactly what Jamie Raskin warned. Like he says, let's talk about you know, privilege here and whether these emails are privileged, whether this is just a massive cover-up. And she goes, that's a difficult one. I've got a really difficult question that is going to be very controversial for me to answer. So I'm just going to insult this guy and then do a bit of whataboutism. So I'm going to insult them and then say, why aren't you focusing on this other thing? No, I'm not talking to you. We're not talking about that. It's irrelevant. We're talking about you and your performance.
Lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you
were
unredact
lead
this?
counsel on that. Privilege.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course. I look forward to discussing this more. Now, these are obviously improper redactions.
And let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking. I'm
if they're
talking.
not privileged,
Quiet.
don't yell at me.
I mean, that's so reflective, that interaction of this whole thing. You know, wanting to interrupt. But the problem is for these people is that it's very difficult to have really decent conversations that get to the bottom of things, because if the person you are interviewing or interacting with refuses to answer the questions, uses all these fallacious techniques, then that requires that you have to keep doubling down and asking that same question again and again. We've seen this in previous hearings where they've asked again and again and again, and they deny and deny and deny and deny, and that's the end of your 5 minutes. You've only got 5 minutes, and every second is counted that you are speaking as a congressperson. So in that case, he has to go on to the next thing because he's only got 5 minutes of interaction where he can speak. And that doesn't really lend itself to drilling down. Like if I was interviewing Pam Bondi on TV, like if I was in a Mehdi Hassan sort of situation, I would drill down. And even though you've got time limits on your program, I would just be like a dog with a bone. I am not going on to my next question until you have answered this question. But the problem with this format is she just denies and denies and denies, and it uses up the 5 minutes. So yeah, that is a real weakness of the whole process, I think. There here we have Jasmine Crockett. Now Jasmine Crockett here is another example of someone that doesn't particularly, I think, ask questions here, but my goodness, she goes to town on Pam Bondi.
You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the president of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ because you don't seem to be good at your job.
Ouch. So that is just torching Pam Bondi there. But all of that is correct. Like her department has lost case after case after case, or they've been dismissed without even going properly to court and jury. Like, so although Ms. Crockett here seems like she's, I guess, so not getting personal or just, you know, just torching Pam Bondi, like it's justifiable.
Spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "This is a good one." Now, I'm not saying...
Now, this is actually very clever of Jasmine Crockett here, because what she's doing and presenting the visuals here. So it's one thing just saying, oh, this was in the Epstein files. But when you present it visually like that, it's actually very difficult to deny, right? Or to just to kind of sweep this under the carpet. If it's just audio, if all Jasmine Crockett was doing was saying this, then you can treat it like an assertion. Oh yeah, whatever. No, yeah, I don't agree with that or don't believe that. But when you have the visual next to the audio, it's actually pretty strong. And what Jasmine Crockett here is doing is laying out the case against Trump. And this is really important because we're going to come to Ted Lieu next, who essentially accuses Pam Bondi of lying under oath. And it gets very heated, but he's absolutely right, because she tries to deny that Donald Trump had anything to do with Epstein in these ways. And Jasmine Crockett here is laying out that actually the evidence is here. Here it is. Look at this big placard I've got here. There's the evidence that ties Epstein to Trump in nefarious ways.
The president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles.
Okay, so that's Jasmine Crockett going to town there on Pam Bondi, and then we're going to get to Ted Lieu here, and this is pretty important, this exchange.
Former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
Answer the question.
This is so ridiculous.
No, it's
and
not.
that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files.
I'm reclaim my time. I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Chairman, please stop the clock. Stop the clock.
the legislation. This is
Time.
this is
I'd like to
ridiculous.
reclaim my time.
Time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape. You said there's no evidence of crime. I'm showing you, here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center.
Pam Bondi's just called Ted Lieu a liar, and Ted Lieu is like, I'm presenting you the evidence. You are denying this evidence. You're just flatly just saying this, this didn't happen without taking into account the evidence. So, something's not right here. You're you're arguably lying under oath.
He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop the limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized his operation. And as we sit here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has
That is worth listening to again at the end there. He's obviously getting emotional himself, justifiably so, I think. But the point is really salient. It's like you've got 1,000 victims, right, in all of these files, and you have not prosecuted a single person other than, Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, but that wasn't you that did that, Pam Bondi. It's not your DOJ that did that. She's in prison. They're doing stuff in the UK. Prince Andrew's, lost his role. Peter Manson's lost his job. Or across Europe, people are being held to account. In the United States, under the DOJ, they're redacting co-conspirators out of the files and protecting the perpetrators while ignoring the victims. She won't even look the victims in the face.
That could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized his operation.
Trump.
And as we say here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has expired.
So that was telling you getting pretty heated there. Here he is again.
I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center because
so this is where this is a part about it's just that cut out of the one we just heard where there's talk about perjury.
I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape.
It's all on videotape. Yeah, check it out. Anyway, I was going to go to, I think we're going to go next to him being interviewed about this. No, we'll go actually to, I think this is Ted Lieu still again, talking about Prince Andrew here.
The July 2025 memo from your Department of Justice stated, quote, "We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties." These two photos, please put the photos back up. These two photos staring you in the face are evidence of a crime and more than enough evidence to predicate an investigation against former Prince Andrew. So I ask you, Attorney General Pam Bondi, why did you shut down this investigation last July, and why have you not prosecuted former Prince Andrew?
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland these questions.
So this is your kind of whataboutism type thing. It's like, hang on, what about Merrick Garland? He was the AG under Biden. Why didn't you ask him these questions? That is valid, right? Merrick Garland, I think, was super weak source and needed to be much more robust. The Epstein files were arguably, it was still an open investigation. And so, that's why the files weren't released. But then did they not follow up? Were they, there are questions to be had there for sure. However, Merrick Garland is not the Attorney General right now. And Merrick Garland is not in the hearing answering questions about the Epstein files. So this is, again, just pure whataboutism. You are the Attorney General. You are in a position to investigate people. And at the moment, you haven't, as Ted Lieu said elsewhere, you haven't prosecuted a single person.
You asked Merrick Garland these questions when he was Attorney General and set before.
I agree with you.
You twice.
I'm reclaiming my time.
Never
I agree with
mentioned it.
you. I agree with you. During
Were
the
you not here then?
Biden administration, I called for people looking at Epstein files. Merrick Garland dropped the ball, as did Attorney General Bill Barr, as did Alex Acosta, a whole string of failures. But you are in charge. You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them.
I think that's really good there from Ted Lieu. And here he is speaking in interview to Midas Touch.
Congressman, what's your reaction to Pam Bondi and her testimony so far in the hearing?
Pam Bondi lied under oath. She said there was no evidence of wrongdoing in the Epstein files of Donald Trump. That's just a lie. There's multiple documents that show wrongdoing with Donald Trump. I showed her one. A witness had called in FBI's National Threat Operations Center and reported evidence of a crime committed by Donald Trump, and no one at the Department of Justice interviewed that witness. That's just one example of Pam Bondi lying under oath. And the fact remains that as of today, there are over 1,000 acknowledged victims of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation. Pam Bondi has not held a single man accountable. That is ludicrous, shameful, and if she had any decency, she should resign.
And what kind of accountability could Pam Bondi face for lying under oath?
First of all, she should prosecute the people that abuse and rape these women. And then, I believe she lied under oath. It's all captured on videotape. I encourage you to watch it. Look at what she said, and then look at the actual documents and Epstein files. There are direct allegations of wrongdoing by Donald Trump. So she just flat out lied under oath.
Could she face any consequences for that, for lying to Congress?
She should. Now, I don't imagine she's going to prosecute herself.
Right.
But a future Department of Justice could certainly prosecute people who lied under oath to Congress.
Congressman, what's your...
Interesting. Okay, so then we come on to where we now Representative Deborah Ross asking about the easy life for Ghislaine Maxwell in her new prison.
But, instead of talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, who hopefully will die in prison, you should be talking about Irina Zarutska.
I have a couple of...
Now, this is another bit of whataboutism. So, weirdly, I think she's referring to the Ukrainian woman who was stabbed on the train. Is that who it is? Irina Zarutska? I should probably know that name. I think that's who it is. And this is just pure like distraction, deflection, and kind of whataboutism. Again, just every single answer is a fallacy. It's like, answer the bloody question. We're not here to talk about her. And I think that's because, see, this file, by the way, is a folder of all the people she speaks to. So she'll have a little section on each person and what's going on in their district, right? So she's speaking to this representative, and Pam Bondi will know, right, this representative has an issue with this thing that they haven't got to the bottom of yet. So if I'm asked a difficult question about the Epstein files or whatever I'm being questioned about, I can just ignore the question and say, yeah, but what about checks notes? What about this case in your district? Why haven't you done anything about that? Fair enough. We can talk about that outside down a pub, right? But right now, I'm not the one in a hearing. You're the one in a hearing being questioned. I'm not the one being questioned. But this is what Pam Bondi does over and over again.
But, instead of talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, who hopefully will die in prison, you should be talking about Irina Zarutska.
I have a couple of
died on a subway.
Right, and I absolutely...
You don't talk about that.
I have been talking about it and actually helping with these issues. But we're going to move back to you.
I bet we are.
Yes, of course, because you're here to testify. That's what the whole point of this endeavor is. So, of course, we're moving back to you.
I bet you are. I bet you are going to talk about me. Who the frick else are we talking about? Literally, this hearing is about you. Like, imagine being in a court, right? And you're being accused of a crime, and you're standing up in a dock and you're like, oh, great. You're going to speak to me again, are you? You're going to ask me questions. What about you guys? What about you? You did something bad last week. Last Tuesday, you stole a loaf of bread from your shop. Yeah? Yeah, but you're the one, mate. You're the one, JP, that's in court for murder, right? And that's what we're talking about. It's unbelievable.
It is all about you. Should Donald Trump pardon or commute her sentence? Should she be released from prison? Yes or no?
I already answered that question.
Good. I'm very glad. I really like this bipartisan agreement about
when
what
it
should
agrees
happen
with
with
you,
her.
but you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You don't want to talk about
I talk about
murdered
her all
by
the
a
time,
violent crime
but I
offender
am not
in
here
your
to
jurisdiction.
testify before Congress. You are. That is your job today.
You are
That's what you're getting paid for.
obsessed with. But
You are obsessed. It's like, no, we're literally, oh my God. I would just find it so hard not to go absolutely batshit crazy at all of these moments.
have you apologized to President Trump? Have you apologized to President Trump? All of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump, you all should be apologizing. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it.
And this is where she admits that she is just the president's defense lawyer there. I'm not going to put up with you guys just sitting here and attacking the president. Okay. Wow. So we had a situation whereby she spoke with Thomas Massie, who is the Kentucky representative who brought the Epstein bill forward with Ro Khanna. He's your, I guess, token Republican asking questions today. AG Pam Bondi says within 40 minutes, the DOJ unredacted Les Wexner's name. So he's a billionaire who was redacted. Thomas Massie then went in and saw these names and said, hang on, these 6 people who I know that I've seen from these emails that are all over. When I looked at the unredacted files, these are the names. Why have you redacted Les Wexner, some billionaire bloke? Like, he's not, why are you protecting him? And then that was all very embarrassing. And then Pam Bondi says here, well, hang on, like, you know, credit where credit's due. Thank you very much. As AG, within 40 minutes, the DOJ unredacted Les Wexner's name when it was redacted. And then, you know, Thomas Massie goes, yeah, but you only did that because I bloody asked you to. Absolutely ridiculous.
Respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a
4,700,
co-conspirator.
Okay.
and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome.
So she then starts going, this guy's got Trump derangement syndrome, like Thomas Massie. Like, before this whole fracas concerning, you know, him and the bill. Like, Thomas Massie is as MAGA Republican as they get. But she's now, oh, he's got Trump derangement syndrome.
We invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You need to get on to watch this matter.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information. None.
Respond. And
So the second someone says, as according to Andrew Fox, Trump derangement syndrome, you know they're a cult member who's lost the argument and can't defend the indefensible. So Thomas Massie there, and he had an interesting set of interactions with Pam Bondi. We're not going to go too much into that because, you know, there's only so much time in a day. We're going to go to Jared Moskowitz next, who is brilliant. He's always a great sort of performer, I would say, in these congressional hearings. Here he is typically on fire.
Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James. Trump's name also appears more times in the Epstein file than Harry Potter's name appears in the 7 books about Harry Potter. Lutnick says that in 2000.
I believe Trump's name appears more than Harry Potter's reference in all the 7 books and all of the films.
Nate, he went to Epstein's home, says he had a massage table in the living room, that Epstein said he got one every day, that it was the right type of massage. he and his wife decide to leave and say they'll never be in a room with him again. Howard then says, I'm sure the Epstein stuff is all on video. He was the greatest blackmailer of all time. Well, how would Howard know that? But now the files are public. And in 2012, we find out that he and his family are on Epstein Island after Epstein pled guilty to state charges. I'm from Florida. I take my family to Disney World, not to Epstein Island. Trump's.
Ouch. Yeah, doing a good job there, Moskowitz. So here we have Mary Scanlon here, who is really calm and collected, and Pam Bondi just loses it.
I think we get it. You don't want to answer the question.
No, you don't get anything regarding public safety.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you for the insult. It's clear you didn't come to Congress prepared to answer questions that the American people have every right to have answered.
I just love that. I love that. Yeah, thank you for the insult. Yeah, thank you for the insult.
I think we get it. You don't want to answer the question.
No, you don't get anything regarding public safety.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you for the insult.
Just so childish. And then we're going to go on to Balint here, who you can see, Representative Balint here in the video. She actually walked out of the hearing. She was, that unimpressed with Pam Bondi.
Americans want accountability.
Who is Chris Malin?
Was the president aware? Please stop talking. It is not your time to ask questions. It is not your time. I'm reclaiming my time, Mr. Chair.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Vermont.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh,
Again, Pam Bondi's trying to answer or trying to switch and bait or do some kind of technique to get to talk about what she wants to talk about. So some other thing, maybe I don't know what she's referring to, maybe something in Balint's district or maybe some other aspect to do with the Epstein files. But Balint's got this question that Pam Bondi is just refusing to answer.
I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes. This is pathetic. This is pathetic, Mr. Chair. I am not asking trick questions here. The American people have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
This is probably one of my favorite exchanges here because she has got righteous indignation with Pam Bondi here. Like, she's absolutely justified in being this angry. Pam Bondi's just not answering any questions. And she's like, this is not a game. The American people have a right to know. I'm not asking you trick questions. These are normal standard questions about the freaking president of the United States and his involvement in a massive sex trafficking ring. Like, come on.
Because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes. This is pathetic. This is pathetic, Mr. Chair. I am not asking trick questions here. The American people have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell.
Boom! Drop the mic. Brilliant. Brilliant. And that's really quick for her to say that. So she accidentally calls her secretary. She's like, I'm Attorney General. Well, I wouldn't have known.
This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell. Americans.
That's a withering look at the end as well. Absolutely one of my favorite interactions that was. Here we have Representative Jayapal. Here someone says, I'm ashamed of Pam Bondi. I sat in her confirmation hearing, and today I am thoroughly disgusted. So this is a national delegate from Texas, and I think this is a Republican as well. Possibly one that spoke, one that commented earlier, but this is Representative Jayapal.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, Please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. To the survivor.
And that is pretty powerful, very similar to what I think Goldman was doing earlier in his 5 minutes time. So yeah, we've already had this one with Thomas Massie. Did you ask Merrick Garland for that? Oh, no. But this is what she asked to a different representative. This is now, sorry, Thomas Massie, this should have been earlier. I've got this in the wrong place. This is the end of what we saw earlier, where he's turning around, getting her to try and replay a video.
Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I'm reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't-
bigger than
when you-
Watergate.
when I don't answer
this,
a question the
this
way you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where
I want to know at
transparent-
what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Les Wexner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban.
So she doesn't answer. She knows that he's out of time, doesn't answer. I mean, as AJ Simon, I think, says, the whole process here is ridiculous, right? You can just like filibuster and not answer and just get away with, you know, I mean, it's pointless being there, right? These are good questions, good points from Thomas Massie here, and Pam Bondi just gets away with it.
Other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired.
And that's how she plays it. Right. Then, but it wasn't just about the Epstein files. We just got a couple more now. This is with regard to Alex Pretty, who was killed by CBP, by the Border Patrol agents.
There are questions about those children, but it's a different thing. The fact is, ICE is running rampant, and you are not investigating them. When they killed Mr. Pretty and Miss Good, that was an execution, and you did not investigate it. And you tried to investigate her, Miss Good's widow, and you tried to investigate Mr. Pretty. They were executed, like Kristi Noem executed her dog, and that was wrong.
That nicely done. Of course, we know from Kristi Noem's autobiography that she shot her puppy in the head after it was, I don't know, did something she didn't like, and then she got excoriated for that, and now it's kind of in popular culture law. You see it turn up in every South Park episode these days. Whenever Kristi Noem's in there, you've got dogs getting shot. It sounds, I don't mean to laugh at that, but it's humorously taken on there. Good point.
Were executed, like Kristi Noem executed her dog, and that was wrong. And you should investigate those people, and you should investigate anybody that uses a weapon, in federal official or not, for civil rights violations. I yield back the balance.
Gentlemen,
there are questions.
Okay, so, you know, pressure in a number of different places. Here we have Representative Jesus Garcia coming out swinging here, and he, obviously being of Hispanic culture, he is not happy with what ICE and the CBP are doing at the moment.
Attorney General Bondi, glad you finally made it here after hiding for 4 months from this committee. I understand why you're hiding from us.
Chairman?
You're one of the worst attorney generals in our history and an instrument of Donald Trump's lawless authoritarian agenda. And I'm glad the American people are seeing who you are, how you act, and the lack of good values. You weaponize the
Ouch, one of the worst attorney generals in the history of this country.
Department of Justice to target immigrants, working families, and anyone that Trump deems an enemy of the state. all to protect real powerful criminals, including in your administration. My Democratic colleagues have focused on your cover-up of the Epstein files and your passion for protecting pedophiles and child traffickers. That alone is grounds for impeachment. But there's so much. Attorney General Bondi.
So not a happy bunny. In fact, we hear audio's not quite as good. This is recorded from a TV on someone's phone, but he's an angry man.
You tried to cover up the murder of Alex Peretti by CBP agents. You bring fake charges against protesters like the Broadview Six and Marimar Martinez, whom your administration labeled a domestic terrorist. This is the Montessori teacher who lived in my district, while protecting thugs who terrorize us and DHS authority. That's what you do. Protect and enable the criminals who are plundering our society and destroying what's left of democracy and the rule of law. Epstein accomplices, mass DHS thugs, corporate criminals, Tom Homan, Eric Adams, insurrectionists, the list goes on. And you talk about fighting crime, but you protect any criminal who helps you and Trump turn our country into an authoritarian gangster state. And after all this, nobody supports you. I'm not talking about Democrats. I'm talking about conservative judges who are condemning the rampant lawlessness at DOJ under your leadership. Your prosecutors are quitting in droves over being forced to prosecute low-level immigration cases, including in Chicagoland. Your MAGA base despises you because you're covering up the Epstein file. How ironic. And even your own boss has repeatedly complained to your staff about you, calling you weak and ineffective. Weak and ineffective. That's what Donald Trump thinks of you already. You will not win, however. Chicagoland rejects you. The American people reject you. Our communities have demonstrated our strength and resilience in the face of cruelty and cowardice. Democrats must impeach and remove lawless officials like you and Kristi Noem and impose accountability for every criminal action. But you can spare yourself more humiliation. Resign now and submit yourself to accountability by the American people. Mr. Chairman, before I yield back.
That was pretty strong. The last one I'm going to show you is it John Neguzzi? I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. Correct pronunciation of his name. There's an interaction here with Pam Bondi.
Do you know which presidential administration under which the PIN was first created?
I can tell you what administration that the weaponization was ended under.
I'll reclaim my time. This wasn't a trick question.
You don't get to
Attorney
reclaim
General.
your time.
Madam Attorney General.
Because I don't like
Mr. Chairman, will you explain to the witness that he does reclaim his time?
Because I don't answer a question to your satisfaction.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Attorney General, the time belongs to the gentleman from Colorado.
The president under which PIN was created was Gerald Ford. It was created after Watergate. I'm not asking a question, Madam Attorney General. The administration under which it was created was Gerald Ford. When you first started as the Attorney General of the United States, there were 35 people working in that office. There are now 2 people working in that office because you have gutted it. How many people work for the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team in the criminal division today?
Can I answer the question about PIN?
I've asked you a question. How many
You've
people
asked
work?
me a question, but you don't
How
want
many
the
people
answer.
work
I'm not
for the
gonna answer your
National
questions the way you
Cryptocurrency
want.
Enforcement Team? You won't answer how many?
I'll
people?
answer PIN.
You.
PIN will not be
You know what?
weaponized.
You know what?
What's
Madam
funny
Attorney
about
General,
this?
I'll say to the chairman.
What's funny about this?
Chairman, you know what the answer is, and I think I understand
funny
why the
about
Attorney General
this?
does not want to answer the question, because you eliminated the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team last year. So I understand why you don't want to tell the American people who works there.
Yeah, I
No one
understand
works
why
there
you don't want to
anymore,
talk about
Madam
Mohammed
Attorney
Solomon
General.
in
So
your district,
in any event,
who
I would
murdered people.
Again, Pam Bondi here saying, you don't want to talk about someone in your district who's a murderer. Like, we're not here to talk about that, Pam Bondi. We're here to ask you questions and you're refusing to answer them. We're talking about cryptocurrency and the fact that your government, your bosses and the boss's family and Steve Witkoff and his family are heavily embroiled in crypto scams and grifting. And you've got rid of the crypto corruption enforcement department, just gutted it. Did you want to tell me something about that? No, you're going to ask me back about why Mohammed bin whoever is doing whatever in wherever.
Answer the question, because you eliminated the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team last year. So I understand why you don't want to tell the American people who works there.
Yeah, I understand why you don't want to talk about Mohammed Solomon in your district.
In any event,
who murdered people.
Mr. Chairman, will you stop the clock so his time is not wasted by the witness?
So yeah, no, the volume on that was a bit low. I boosted it as well. But yeah, and I was just, while one of those videos was playing earlier, Garcia's video was playing earlier, I've just found this has come out as well. So essentially, I don't know if yeah, I'm going to play this video. Pretty incredible stuff. I want to make sure I understand what has happened, because this is just sort of popping out now on my feed.
Another photograph for you to take a look at. These are notes that the Attorney General brought to the hearing today. Okay, it was captured by a photographer who was in the room. And this shows a list of Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, you saw her in some of those clips, of her search history. And this, of course, lawmakers are allowed now to go to a DOJ facility, to sit down at a computer and to search unredacted files. We have learned from this photo that the searches that members of Congress are performing are apparently being tracked and then read by the Department of Justice, by the Attorney General. What do you make of that development?
Well, it's a surveillance of Congress by the Trump administration. It's wholly improper.
So the people who are looking into the redacted files or unredacted files are being themselves surveilled by the Trump administration. So they aren't investigating the Epstein files, but Bondi is tracking the searches of each member of Congress who is accessing the files. She's more worried about what you find than any shred of justice. She needs to be impeached. Absolutely incredible. That just blows my mind. Anyway, that is that. The last thing I'm going to show you is John Thune, and this, I think this actually happened before the hearing today. But when you have the a senior Republican like John Thune calling for the full release of the Epstein files, this is a major thing, right? He is a big player. Now, he's one of your more moderate Republicans, but yeah.
Several members of the British political class, the royal family, have lost their positions as a result of them appearing in the Epstein files. That same level of penalty has not happened here in the United States, particularly with members of the Trump cabinet, Howard Lutnick in particular. Do you think there should be more scrutiny around Americans who have appeared in the Epstein files?
Well, look, I think it's going to be ultimately what happens there is probably going to be up to the American people. And what I've been for, and I've been very clear about this from the outset, is full disclosure. Get the information out there. Let's have transparency. And I think that's being done. And so, you know, for people whose names appear or in some context might be in the Epstein files, they're going to have to answer the questions around that. And I think the American people are going to have to make judgments about whether or not they think those answers are sufficient.
So what we have here is maybe the beginnings, maybe a reflection of the unity in the Republican Party possibly cracking. You've got a really senior he's not, surely he's a speaker, actually, he's the majority speaker of the Senate for the Republicans, calling for the full Epstein files to be released. Like, the DOJ hasn't done it, haven't done a good enough job. We need transparency. They need to be released. And just talking about the idea that there is a kind of permission structure to go against the grain. I'm also just finding out this, although it's not to do with the Epstein files, this is a big piece of breaking news. I am finding out that in a tremendous blow to Trump, the House has just voted to end Donald Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods. 6 Republicans voted with the Democrats: Thomas Massie, Brian Fitzpatrick, Newhouse, Kiley, Hurd, and Bacon. so Bacon and Massie at the moment are they voted a couple of times recently against essentially Trump's diktat here, but Trump's control is slipping is the idea. This is huge, right? The House of Representatives has begun this process of potentially making it so that the tariffs on Canada might not be tenable going forward, and then there might be a situation where they have to be paid back, so on and so forth. This is incredibly important, but more germane to what we've been talking about so far in this video is the idea that there are people who are starting to feel emboldened to rise up against the Trumpian position, whatever it may be, on whatever subject matter it is. So yeah, interesting times. What do we take from all of what happened today? Well, I don't think anything is particularly going to happen to Pam Bondi in terms of, you know, there's going to be no accountability, because there is no accountability in the government. Everyone seems to be like Teflon, or maybe greasy is probably a more apt metaphor. They are, nothing sticks with Trump, and it appears with anyone who works for him. You know, there are no fall guys really. Tim Walz was a fall guy earlier for Signalgate, but outside of that, we've seen no one being fall guys. That Trump's administration could just say what it likes and do what it likes, and there's no comeback. And Pam Bondi, as bad as that performance was, there'll be MAGA Republicans who will look at that performance, say, yeah, I love it, how combative she was, taking it back to the Democrats. You know, not looking at the structure of what she's saying and how she's simply not doing the job of answering the questions, and how deflective she is. She was being, you know, that won't register for people who want to see Pam Bondi as the bee's knees. And so they'll look at how she was shouting back at these Democrats and think that that was a great success, when actually it was an unmitigated disaster if you're looking at it from any kind of objective viewpoint. Now, I know that I'm not objective, but like there's no way you can look at that and saying that is how the Attorney General of the United States should act. That is how you should robustly answer questions that are made actually in good faith. Those questions are good faith questions. They're questions that you and I would deem as sensible to ask of the Attorney General. And if the Attorney General is effectively refusing to answer them, then that's not good enough, right? Objectively, her performance was not good enough. There was no extra clarity that on these matters that has been revealed from Pam Bondi's answers. Okay, so yeah, it was an unmitigated disaster, I would argue, but I don't think it changes anything. I don't think she's going to come away and go, right, let's go and release more Epstein files, let's unredact some of these redacted names. Yeah, I think the pressure comes from the people, and there are a couple of other like Senate, like state Senate elections and Supreme Court elections within states. I don't know if it's Supreme Court. I think there's one coming up. But anyway, another couple of elections. There was a swing of like 75 was there in one district over the last 24 hours. Huge swings. That's I think telling, and probably will have an effect on Trump doing something, you know, changing something about the way he's doing things, because that is people voting in protest of the Trump administration. And when you've got the midterm elections coming up, they have to take that into account and change their ways. The other option is, of course, they don't change their ways and they'll get absolutely slaughtered at the midterm. So they'll just cheat their way through the midterms and rig the elections, you know, getting rid of mail-in ballots, getting rid of voting machines, getting rid of this, getting rid of that, having much stricter ID to disenfranchise people who are in the lower socioeconomic strata, who are more likely to vote Democrat, in certain areas, so on and so forth. Is that kind of approach that I think Trump is adopting, because I'm sure he or his strategists will have a pretty good idea that they're going to get absolutely slaughtered in the midterms if they continue going down this path. And they appear to be continuing to go down this path, protecting the Epstein elite. Although they've quietly pulled out National Guard, this is not something that's being talked about a lot, but the National Guard, I think, has been pulled out of places where they have been active, Chicago, Los Angeles, so on and so forth, where they're still hanging around some of these places. I think they no longer are there. They're probably going to scale back ICE, in the lead up to the elections, and hope that people forget over the next 6 months about how horrific it's been. So there might be some changes, but the Trump administration will be acting only through the lens of the midterm elections. I think they'll only be changing approach to anything on account of the midterms, not on account of hearings where Democrats get to excoriate Pam Bondi. What I'm interested to see is whether the rest of these files come out. There's another 3 million files in there. And as Jamie Raskin says, they aren't duplicative. They're not duplicates. They are, there's no way you can say, oh, we've got every file's been duplicated once. So, those 3 million files we release, there's another 3 million in there, but they're just, carbon copies of what we already put out. That's a load of rubbish. We know there's an awful lot of stuff that hasn't been released. There's a ton of video. There's a ton of pictures. And okay, very sensitive and so on and so forth. But we understand. In fact, isn't there some stats about 95% of Trump's names being redacted out? I've got some other stats that I was due to share with you at some point, but essentially, Pam Bondi's job appears to have been protecting Donald Trump. And so there are 3 million files that I think are going to be the ones that are most likely to implicate Donald Trump, and they are the ones that have not been released. Okay, so thank you very much to all of you guys. I'm just going to run through a couple of super chats and whatnot just to give you due thanks. Putin Puppet says it's clear now. Epstein, Putin, Trump networks now can be used against all of the far right parties. Being factually Epstein supporters in all democracies won't make them look good. I mean, it is bizarre that the far right in Europe seem to be far more supportive of the Trump administration, and therefore, by extension, more supportive of Epstein cover-ups. And it's like, what a weird position to be in. So we have Putin Puppet. So should Pam be sent to the Epstein Island? The temporarily high Dow BS tech bros, Palantir is only for the happy few. Better ask about the declining Krasnov Putin dollar and US economics. Yeah, I mean, that would be one come back to Pam Bondi there. It's like, yeah, you can shout about how the stock market is at record highs and whatnot, but actually, how are people feeling on the streets? What's inflation feeling like to the average American? Bondi has Trump devotion syndrome, says Ignis of the Flame, rather than Trump derangement syndrome. I totally agree there, Ignis. So thank you to Putin Puppet. Thank you to Ignis of the Flame. And then Putin Puppet finally here. Mafia Miss Pam Bondi. Type of argumentation can be heard in all the far right incompetent parties everywhere, equals rather the Russian type of mafia logic as well. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, Russians won't have any kind of hearings. I mean, yeah, I'm going to go off on one. I think there needs to be some kind of procedural change to these sorts of hearings, because I don't think they lend themselves. As soon as you agree that you're not going to answer the questions at all, and any difficult question will be battered away, then they can become pointless. Unless there's some kind of mechanism where you have to answer the question, or there's some kind of consequence, then these sorts of hearings are fairly pointless. But that's just my tuppence. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. It is now almost 1 o'clock UK time at night, so I better get off get off now, but I really appreciate your support. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really appreciate that. And please remember to like, subscribe, and share to keep yourselves in the loop. I'm sure most of the people listening here already have done so. I even heard that one of you was listening in a truck, saying that the volume was okay for the videos you were listening to. So thank you for listening wherever you are. Really appreciate your support. Take care. Toodle pips.